I rescued a white wolf. I lured him with food. Want some meat? Come home with me. After bringing him back, my daily routine became petting his ears and playing with his tail. Later, when the white wolf entered his heat, he turned the tables and pinned me down. Your Highness, it's time for me to have my share. It was only much later that I realized touching his ears and tail were actually courtship behaviors. And as for a wolf's heat, it lasts an entire month. I found him in the snow. At first glance, I thought he was a corpse. Thick layers of snow pressed down over his body, leaving only a spill of silver hair and a pale cheek exposed, almost blending into the white around him. I swung down from my horse and crouched beside him. Just as I was about to check his breathing, his eyes snapped open. Amber, slitted like a wolf's. Your Highness, be careful! Before my attendant could even finish shouting, he lunged forward and sank his teeth into my wrist. Warm blood flowed. His eyes lit up, and he clutched my hand, greedily drinking. Behind me, my guards drew their blades in unison, but I raised a hand to stop them. The boy scrambled to his feet and retreated 2 steps, dropping low onto all fours like a wolf ready to pounce. Those vertical pupils stayed locked on me, gleaming with a cold, feral light. When I moved, a low, threatening growl rumbled from his throat. Looks like he was raised by wolves since childhood. I took a step back, softening my voice. Don't be afraid, I won't hurt you. Then I took a pouch from my attendant, Yi Chi, and tossed him some dried rations. Worried he might not dare to eat, I demonstrated first, taking a couple of bites. The boy glanced at me, lowered his head to sniff the food, and only then stuffed it into his mouth. I hadn't even had time to smile in relief before he spat everything out, his face full of disgust. All right. You're practically starving and still this picky? Even more particular than me. The prince? Fine. Considering you were raised like a wolf, I won't argue with you. I ordered my men to carve up the fresh venison we just hunted. The moment a piece was tossed over, the boy snatched it and darted to a corner, devouring it like a starving beast. In no time, an entire deer leg was stripped down to bone. He licked the blood from his palm, then tilted his head, studying me. I studied him in return. His clothes were in tatters, his body covered in wounds and dried blood, filthy with hardly a patch of uninjured skin. Perhaps satisfied from the meal, a pair of pointed wolf ears suddenly appeared atop his head. Soft, fluffy, adorable. He wasn't human at all, but a white wolf who had taken human form. I've never had any resistance to fluffy things. My eyes flickered, and an idea immediately formed. I beckoned to him, smiling as gently as I could. Do you want more? He hesitated for a moment, but eventually crawled over, his gaze burning as it fixed on the meat. I removed my cloak and wrapped it around him. His body stiffened briefly. His nose twitched, as if memorizing my scent. Even when I reached out to touch his wolf ears, he didn't resist. My mood instantly lifted. I cut off another piece of venison and held it to his lips, coaxing him. Come home with me, and all of this will be yours. The first thing I did after bringing him back was send him to bathe. After all, I had every intention of properly handling him once he was clean. A maid soon came to report Xiao Bai refused to bathe. Oh, right. Xiao Bai is the name I just gave him. He was curled up in a corner, baring his teeth and letting out low, warning growls. Anyone who got close, he bit. Even 3 or 5 people together couldn't hold him down. The moment I stepped into the room, he bolted toward me. With a loud, "Oh, he pounced and knocked me flat onto the ground. I pushed myself up and pressed a finger against his forehead, gently holding him back to stop him from licking my face. Xiao Bai didn't get upset. Instead, he licked my finger. His big tail wagged wildly, thumping against me. Get down. I said it coldly. Humph. I have a cleanliness obsession. You're this filthy. Who would want you clinging all over them? At my words, his pointed wolf ears drooped, and his tail stopped wagging. Those amber eyes turned damp as he looked at me. Who could resist that? My resolve melted instantly. Still, rules had to be taught. I dismissed everyone else and softened my tone. Be good. Sit properly. Xiao Bai carefully studied my expression, then obediently sat cross-legged. I pointed at the bath and coaxed him gently. Take off your clothes, get in, and wash yourself clean. Xiao Bai clutched the cloak tighter and shook his head vigorously. Clean, don't take off. Not fragrant enough? I added 2 more handfuls of flower petals into the bath. Still, he held onto the cloak for dear life. My patience snapped. In all my life, this is the first time I've personally attended to someone, and this brat still won't cooperate? I bent down and scooped him up in my arms. This time, he had some sense. He let go of the cloak, but grabbed onto my collar instead, which led to the obvious outcome. The two of us tumbled straight into the bath together. With a loud splash, water went everywhere. Hearing the noise, Yichi stepped forward. "Your Highness?" "It's fine." Outside the door, Yichi quietly retreated. Inside the tub, Xiaobai's fluffy tail wrapped tightly around my waist. The tip of it brushed up and down against my lower abdomen, as if intentionally, or maybe not. I was about to scold him, but seeing the pure look in his eyes, I swallowed my words. Forget it. He's just a wolf. He doesn't understand anything. He only wants to be close to me. What fault could there be in that? I reached out and ruffled his hair. Xiaobai closed his eyes in satisfaction. Just as I was about to pull my hand back, he grabbed my wrist and began licking the wound on it, the one he bit earlier that afternoon. His rough tongue brushed over the injury, sending a strange shiver through me. Suppressing the odd feeling rising in my chest, I patted his head. "Xiaobai, be good. Don't make trouble." He kept licking seriously, and after a while muttered vaguely, "Lick heals faster." Ah, right. Only then did I remember, wolf saliva does seem to have disinfecting and healing properties. Still, something about this felt a little strange. Xiaobai was covered in wounds, so I didn't dare use too much force. It took me a long time, but I finally managed to wash him clean. Once the blood and grime were gone, I realized just how handsome he was. He looked obedient at first glance, but between his brows lingered a wildness that refused to be tamed. "Your Highness," Xiaobai called out to me from the bed, snapping me out of my thoughts. He pointed at the wound on his chest, his eyes sparkling as he looked at me. "Your Highness, wound, lick." Still in shock, I smacked the back of his head. "I'm not a wolf. What do you mean, lick?" Xiaobai pouted, and just like that, my heart softened again. "Don't cry. I wasn't scolding you." All right, my fault. I'll apply medicine for you." I took out some ointment and carefully applied it over his wounds, inch by inch. The medicine was cool, and every time I touched him with it, Xiaobai would shiver slightly. At first, I thought it was just the chill, but as I continued, I began to notice something else. His breathing had grown uneven. His fingers slowly tightened around the edge of the bedding, and his gaze stayed fixed on me. Too focused. Too intense. I paused, my hand hovering midair. "Does it hurt?" I asked, frowning. Xiaobai didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at me with those amber eyes, quiet, deep, and unsettlingly earnest. "Feels strange," he murmured. "Strange?" I cleared my throat, suddenly feeling a bit off myself. "Endure it. The medicine is supposed to help." He nodded obediently, but his gaze never left me. For some reason, the air between us felt warmer than before. "This is getting weird." I quickly finished applying the medicine and pulled a blanket over him. "Rest properly," I said, forcing my tone back to normal. "I'll check on you later." Just then, the window creaked open slightly. A white cat stepped in gracefully, tail raised high, as if it owned the place. My eyes lit up instantly. "Xiaohei, come here!" The cat let out a soft meow, and immediately, loud barking erupted from outside. I raised my voice. "Xiaohuang, stop barking." When I turned back, Xiaobai's face had gone dark. His eyes were filled with grievance as he glared at me. "Your Highness is bad. I hate you." "Ah, so that's it." I quickly softened my tone and leaned closer. All right, don't be upset," I coaxed gently. "You're different. You're the one I like the most." For a moment he froze. Then his wolf ears turned faintly red, and his expression softened. His eyes curved ever so slightly, like he was trying not to smile. Wait, did that actually work? In the past, I had cats and dogs, living a perfectly blissful life. Now, the cats and dogs won't even come near me. The only one I can dote on is Xiaobai. I can't help it. The moment Xiaohei or Xiaohuang gets close, Xiaobai bares his sharp white teeth, looking ready to start a full-blown fight. For a while, the entire manor was in chaos. Chickens flying, dogs barking, cats yowling, and wolves howling. Quite literally. Xiaobai has a terrible temper, and lately, I've been especially fond of him. So naturally, I can only give in. Fortunately, he's incredibly easy to coax. Say a few nice things, and his tail starts wagging so fast it's almost a blur. What kind of wolf is this? He's clearly just a big, affectionate dog. The weather had been nice these past few days. Xiaobai had taken on his white wolf form, lying lazily in the corridor, basking in the sun. Looking at that soft, fluffy fur, my hands immediately started itching. I picked him up and hugged him tightly, unable to resist. Xiaobai's face flushed red, but he didn't resist. He really is pure-hearted. After that, Xiaobai became even more clingy. Every day, he would come bounding into my arms, begging for kisses, cuddles, and to be lifted high into the air. Naturally, I was more than happy to oblige. After dealing with a proud rooster, an aloof cat, and a mischievous dog, I had finally obtained someone so obedient. It goes without saying how happy I was. Even the steward remarked, "Your Highness hasn't smiled like this in a long time." Heh, the healing power of companionship, you wouldn't understand. When you're in a good mood, everything feels pleasant, and everything you do goes smoothly. Just like today, I ran into Xiaohei while I was out, and for once, the little thing wasn't arrogant. It even came over on its own and rubbed against my hand. My heart softened, and before I knew it, I had given it a few gentle pats. When I returned to my room, disaster. Xiaobai had practically torn the place apart. Servants stood nearby, completely helpless. "Let go," I said, walking over and grabbing him by the scruff. He spat out half a torn mat and looked at me with watery eyes. I almost gave in. But after a moment, I hardened my resolve. "You weren't well behaved. No meat for you tonight." Xiaobai nudged my chin with his ears and wrapped his tail around my wrist. When I didn't react, his fur bristled, and he transformed into human form, accusing me. "Your Highness, you went behind my back." That wording. Does he mean I secretly patted the cat? Even though I didn't think I'd done anything wrong, I still rubbed my nose awkwardly and tried to explain. I just made a small mistake. Anyone would have done the same." Xiaobai's face turned pale, tears pooling in his eyes. "Your Highness, don't you want me anymore?" Maybe I should have comforted him, said something like, "You're the one I like most." But then I thought, this might be a good chance to teach him something. I gently wiped his tears and softened my voice. "Xiaohei, Xiaohuang, Xiaohong, and you. You're all important to me. You need to learn to get along." Xiaobai looked aggrieved, then burst out, "Who wants to be your pet?" and ran out. Later, as I worked through official documents, something felt off. Usually, Xiaobai would be lying across my lap, napping, letting me absent-mindedly play with his tail. When I reached out now, there was nothing. I sighed and went out to look for him, but I couldn't find him. That night, as I was about to sleep, Xiaobai quietly returned. He slipped under the blankets, pressing close to me, his fluffy head rubbed against my neck, seeking comfort. I pinched the tip of his ear lightly. "Don't make trouble," but he leaned further into my hand instead. "Your Highness, touch me, but don't touch the others." I couldn't help but smile a little. You really are possessive. Cyrus Kingsley was not only domineering, he was also very unconventional. Everyone in the manor called me Your Highness, but he insisted on calling me by my name, Tristan Kingsley. And he wouldn't let me call him Xiaobai either, demanding that I give him a proper human name. I teased him. "Then take my surname. I'll call you Cyrus Kingsley from now on." "Tristan." He rested his chin on my shoulder, rubbing lightly against my neck. "I like it." I froze for a second. "What?" "The new name, I like it." Xiaobai. No, Cyrus said. Cyrus wanted me to teach him how to live as a human. The first lesson, using chopsticks. His slit pupils locked onto the dishes, his throat bobbing slightly. Just as I thought he was about to grab the food with his hands again, he suddenly rested his chin on the table. "Tristan, feed me." This guy, he doesn't learn the proper things, but he's already mastered acting spoiled. I tugged his ear. "Sit properly." As it turned out, teaching Cyrus to use chopsticks was more exhausting than fighting a battle. After correcting his beast-like grip countless times, I finally lost patience and stepped in. I moved behind him, wrapping an arm around him as I guided his hand. "Hold it here." "Yes, like that. Grip it properly." "Got it?" Cyrus nodded blankly, the tips of his ears turning warm. I've heard wolves are extremely competitive. So I sat beside him, picked up my chopsticks, and challenged him. "I'm a beginner too right now. Cyrus, let's see who gets this piece of meat first." Our chopsticks trembled as we both tried to grab the same piece. In the end, I barely won. Just as I was about to put the meat into my mouth, Cyrus reacted instantly, catching it with his chopsticks. Then, with a quick flick of his tongue, he snatched the meat straight from my lips. He stole it, just like that. I froze. A long moment passed before I snapped. "Cyrus, that's cheating!" Cyrus picked up another piece of meat and held it up to my lips, looking at me expectantly. There seemed to be a spark of excitement in his eyes. "Tristan, it's good." "Humph, at least you know how to make up for it." Half my anger faded. I leaned forward and took a bite, only for Cyrus to lower his head and steal it again. "Cyrus! You dog." I lunged at him. "Give it back." I must have had a bit of oil at the corner of my lips, because Cyrus didn't waste it. He leaned in and licked it away, then narrowed his eyes in satisfaction. For a moment, the world seemed to fall silent. I forgot how to breathe. The soft brush of his lips lingered, magnified endlessly in my mind, until a cold voice sounded from above. "Seems I've arrived at a rather inconvenient time." Only then did I snap back to reality and shove Cyrus away. Elliot Vale, the youngest general of the Vale dynasty. We grew up together. I once trusted him with all my heart, but he used me, and we broke completely. I don't know why he still came to see me, acting as if nothing had ever happened. "Tristan, it's been a while." I scoffed. "If you hadn't come, I'd be doing perfectly fine." Elliot lowered his head with a soft laugh. "You're still as sharp-tongued as ever. Tristan." "Don't call me Tristan. We're not close enough for that," I said coldly. "General, address me properly, as the Ninth Prince." Elliot looked at me quietly. There was something complicated in his eyes. Pain, regret, sorrow. But he was the one who used me back then. And now he dares to act like this? Disgusting. I cut him off impatiently. "Say it. Why are you here?" Elliot slipped effortlessly into a look of deep affection. "Ever since you were sent to Lee Province, you've been avoiding me. Tristan, I've missed you." "Missed me?" I let out a cold laugh. "Or do you miss what you can get from me? Elliot Vale, I won't trust you again." "Stop acting." This time his expression shifted, wounded, almost fragile. "Tristan, thinking of me that way, it hurts." I sighed inwardly. At this point, acting had probably become second nature to him. I had no interest in wasting more words. "There's nothing here for you. General, you should leave." "You..." He stepped forward suddenly, gripping my shoulders tightly. "Tristan, I want you." I broke free from his hold and stepped back, putting distance between us. The movement seemed to strike something in him. His gentle mask shattered, and in its place was something far more twisted. "Tristan, you never treated me like this before. Is it because of that beast?" "Cyrus is not a beast." "Yes, he's not a beast. He's a monster," Elliot Vale shouted. "Why is it that he can have you, but I can't?" As if possessed, he suddenly lunged forward and tried to kiss me. I swung my fist at him, but he caught both my wrists, pinning them above my head. His burning breath drew closer and closer. I had already braced myself to bite him if I had to. A flash of white, Cyrus struck him down. Elliot let out a cold, mocking laugh. Drawing his sword, he attacked swiftly. I tried to stop them, but only made their clash more chaotic. Cyrus was strong, but he had never faced such fast, ruthless swordsmanship. The blade cut into his skin several times. But unexpectedly, he learned quickly. Almost instantly, he began to read Elliot's movements, dodging with growing precision and striking back. Elliot's sword was knocked from his hand. In the next second, Cyrus had him by the throat, fingers tightening inch by inch. Veins bulged. Elliot's face turned from red to purple. At this rate, he would die. "Cyrus, let go?" Elliot Vale was the Prime Minister's son, the general who commanded the forces of Lee Province. He couldn't die here, not in my residence, and certainly not at Cyrus's hands. Cyrus didn't understand any of that. He looked at me, hurt, confused, almost betrayed, but he still loosened his grip. Elliot collapsed to the ground, scrambling back a few steps before finally daring to breathe. But I had no time to spare him another glance, because Cyrus had already grabbed my hand, guiding it to the wounds on his body, his eyes damp. "Tristan, it hurts." I hadn't even had time to feel sorry for him, when a cold glint flashed behind him. Elliot had picked up his sword and thrust it straight toward Cyrus. My pupils shrank. Before I could think, my body moved on instinct. I shoved Cyrus away. Elliot, startled, pulled back slightly, but the blade still pierced into me by half an inch. Cyrus caught me as I staggered. With a single strike, he sent Elliot flying into the wall. I could clearly see it. Cyrus's eyes had turned red. Afraid he might lose control, I quickly wrapped my arms around his waist and spoke first. "Cyrus, it hurts." Elliot Vale was dragged away by the attendants. I, on the other hand, was swept up into Cyrus Kingsley's arms. He carried me straight to the bed and laid me down, his movements hurried but careful. Without another word, he reached for my clothes, pulling them aside just enough to check the wound. Cyrus, I started, but stopped. He wasn't looking at me. His gaze was fixed on the injury, his brows drawn tight, his expression tense in a way I had never seen before. For a moment, he almost looked afraid. He leaned closer, one arm braced beside me, the other steadying my shoulder. His familiar scent surrounded me again. I instinctively tried to move, but he caught my wrist and pressed it gently down. "Don't move," he murmured, his voice low. Then he lowered his head and carefully tended to the wound. The touch was warm, gentle, far more cautious than I expected from him. It eased the sharp sting almost instantly. I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. "It still hurts?" he asked quietly. I hesitated, then nodded slightly. Cyrus frowned, clearly dissatisfied. As if thinking for a moment, he leaned in again, this time pressing a soft, lingering kiss near the edge of the wound. "Does that help?" he asked. I froze. "A little," I admitted, my voice softer than before. Cyrus seemed to take that seriously. He stayed close, his presence steady and unwavering, as if determined to chase away every bit of pain. When I flinched slightly, he reached up and brushed his lips lightly against my temple, then the corner of my lips, gentle, careful, almost coaxing. "Don't be afraid," he murmured. My breath caught. The earlier chaos, the pain, the tension, all of it seemed to fade under that quiet closeness. I didn't know when my fingers had tightened slightly in his sleeve, or when I had stopped pushing him away. Cyrus pulled back just enough to look at me. Those amber eyes were bright, focused only on me. "Tristan," he said softly, almost uncertain for once. "Is this okay?" For several nights in a row, Cyrus kept appearing in my dreams. In them, he would wrap me tightly in his arms, burying his head against me, his tail coiling around my waist as if he refused to let go. When I woke up, my whole body felt strangely restless. And Cyrus, of course, had no idea what was going on. He still stuck close to me, just like always. Every morning he would look at me with those bright, innocent eyes, his tail wagging eagerly, full of expectation. "Tristan, I learned the chopsticks." Reward. I swallowed. He was way too cute. For a moment, all I could think was, he's adorable. I want to spoil him. Then I immediately scolded myself. Cyrus was just a young wolf. He didn't understand anything. What was I even thinking? Seeing that I didn't respond, Cyrus hooked his tail lightly around my ankle, tugging at me. "Tristan, reward." I snapped out of it and cleared my throat, waving a hand grandly. "Whatever you want. Just say it. I'll give it to you." I had wealth, power. What couldn't I give? Since he had chosen to stay by my side, I would naturally give him everything. Anything he wanted. Even if it was something impossible. I would still find a way. Cyrus stared at me without blinking, then said something shocking. "I want Tristan." What? For a moment, I was completely speechless. Seeing my silence, Cyrus stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. Before I could react, he leaned in, and suddenly pushed me down onto the ground. "Cyrus!" I barely had time to speak before he nuzzled close, his head brushing against my neck in a familiar, affectionate way. "Tristan, mine," he murmured softly. His voice was low, almost stubborn. I grabbed his ear lightly, trying to sound stern. "You're asking for trouble, aren't you?" Cyrus tilted his head into my hand instead, looking completely innocent. Then, without warning, he leaned in and pressed a quick, light kiss to the corner of my lips. "Tristan, you're sweet." I froze. For a long moment, I couldn't say a single word. Cyrus didn't know. I liked men. It wasn't something I chose. It was simply the way I was. When I reached marriageable age, father and mother began arranging matches for me. Daughters of noble families were sent before me one after another. Beautiful ones, gentle ones, elegant ones, bold ones. But I didn't like a single one of them. When I finally made my preferences known, father was furious. And not long after, I was sent away to Lee Province. That foolish wolf, Cyrus, had no idea he'd already caught the attention of someone like me. Every day, he trained in my courtyard, sleeves rolled up, saying he wanted to protect me. Sunlight poured over him, sweat trailing down from his jaw, sliding across his skin as he moved. It was distracting. Just one glance was enough to make me look away. And to think, when I bathed him before, I hadn't even noticed how well built he was. Tall, long-legged, broad-shouldered, with a narrow waist, his movements smooth and powerful. Dangerous to look at for too long. I quickly shut the window and tilted my head back, wiping my face with a handkerchief. This was getting out of hand. For the sake of my own peace of mind, I started going out more often, only returning late at night. Luckily, I'd been busy lately discussing plans to suppress bandits, so I didn't have much time to dwell on it. But one night, when I returned late, I found Cyrus sitting outside my door, hugging a pillow, looking utterly pitiful. The moment he saw me, he rushed over, rubbing his head against my chin, his eyes slightly damp. Tristan, bad dream, scared. No one could refuse a white wolf looking like that, and I was no exception. But soon enough, I regretted it. While I was bathing, Cyrus sat obediently by the tub, tail wagging as he waited. No matter how I tried, I couldn't chase him away. So I hurried. The moment I finished and stepped out, he pounced, pulling me onto the bed. He wrapped me tightly in his arms, his soft silver tail curling around my leg as he nuzzled into my neck. "Tristan, you smell nice." Cyrus was anything but well behaved. His tail tightened little by little, the tip brushing lightly behind my knee. His hand rested against my side, slowly shifting as if testing boundaries. My voice came out low as I stopped him. "If you keep moving, get off." Cyrus let out a soft, aggrieved sound. But he listened. He held me still, no longer moving. Still, something about the closeness made it impossible for me to relax. I didn't dare move at all. And just like that, I stayed awake until dawn. At daybreak, I quietly slipped out of the manor. I had no choice. I was exhausted. With Cyrus by my side, I couldn't sleep at all, nor did I dare to. I found a random inn and slept like the dead. By the time I returned, stretching lazily and feeling refreshed, Cyrus was gone. No one knew where he had gone off to. Even the old steward sighed. Cyrus never leaves the manor. Who knows what's gotten into him today? Elliot's unwilling expression from that day flashed through my mind. A bad feeling crept up in my chest. I immediately sent people out to search for Cyrus. While I rode straight to Elliot Vale's residence, grabbed him by the collar, and slammed him against the wall. "Where is Cyrus?" Elliot stared at me, smiling like a madman. "Why don't you guess?" I slapped him hard across the face. "If a single hair on his head is harmed, I'll make sure you regret it." "You care about him that much?" Elliot tilted his head, smirking. "Maybe he's off enjoying himself somewhere." I was just about to punch him, when a servant rushed out, panic in his voice. "General, that beast." His words cut off the moment he saw me. He dropped to his knees, not daring to look up. I understood immediately. Kicking Elliot aside, I strode inside. The guards didn't dare stop me. I kicked the door open and saw Cyrus. Chained with iron shackles, his body tense, veins standing out across his skin, his face drenched in sweat as he clenched his teeth. A few lightly dressed women huddled in the corner, looking at him in fear, yet also hesitant, as if forced to stay. My voice turned cold. "Get out." Within seconds, the room was empty. The moment Cyrus heard my voice, the tension in his body loosened. When he looked at me, his eyes were red. "Tristan, I feel awful." It was obvious. Elliot had drugged him. That bastard. I clenched my fists, snapping the chains apart before crouching beside him. "Cyrus, My voice came out rougher than expected. I paused, then forced myself to continue. "I'll call a doctor." Cyrus's silver ears drooped, and he nodded obediently. The doctor said the drug had triggered his instincts early. There was only one way to deal with it. No other option. Looking at Cyrus trying to endure it, I gritted my teeth. "Should I find you someone?" I asked hesitantly. Cyrus looked at me in disbelief. For a moment, it felt like something inside him was breaking. His eyes filled with tears, but his voice remained firm. "I won't touch anyone else." Then what was I supposed to do? I was completely at a loss. Cyrus suddenly grabbed my wrist and looked straight at me. "Tristan, I only want you. I like you." It felt like something exploded in my mind. I stood there, frozen, unable to react. His tail slowly curled around me, brushing lightly against my back. Those bright eyes, slightly red at the corners, looked at me almost pleadingly. "Tristan, will you help me?" "Help you?" I let out a short laugh. As if someone who had seen and experienced so much, would actually hesitate now. Before I could overthink it, I pushed Cyrus down onto the bed. With temptation like this, how could I back down? And yet, the moment I glanced at him, at how vulnerable he looked, something in me faltered. I instinctively pulled back, intending to retreat, but Cyrus moved faster. He flipped us over in an instant, wrapping an arm tightly around my waist. His breath was hot against my ear. "Tristan, why are you running?" My struggling hands were caught and pressed against his chest. Warm, steady, real. My throat went dry. He guided me gently, his voice low, almost coaxing. "Aren't you curious?" Heat rushed to my face. Cyrus leaned closer, his lips brushing lightly against my ear, his voice uneven but soft. "Tristan, help me." I froze, completely at a loss. My mind went blank. Cyrus let out a quiet laugh. Then, carefully, he lifted me closer, his hold firm but not forceful. There was hesitation in his movements, uncertainty even. I could feel it. He wasn't in control either. That realization steadied me. I reached out, gripping his shoulder slightly. "Hey," I muttered, trying to sound composed. "Be careful." Cyrus paused. Then, more gently this time, he leaned in, pressing a soft kiss against my lips. Not rushed, not forceful. Just asking. My breath caught. Everything after that felt blurred, like being pulled into something neither of us fully understood. At one point, I flinched slightly. Cyrus immediately stopped, his expression turning anxious. "Tristan, I'm sorry." This fool. Even now, he was still worried about me. I let out a quiet breath and brushed my lips lightly against the corner of his mouth. "Just slow down." For a moment, he simply stared at me. Then he nodded. But that restraint didn't last long. Soon enough, he pulled me closer again, his movements less uncertain, more instinctive. My fingers tightened slightly against him. His presence surrounded me completely. By the time everything finally settled, I felt completely drained. "I'm never letting you take the lead again," I muttered under my breath. When we first met, I was the one carrying him to bathe. Now, Cyrus Kingsley held me in his arms, carefully washing me instead. His gaze lingered on the faint marks across my skin, his eyes darkening slightly. I quickly caught his wrist, stopping him before he could get any ideas. "All right, that's enough," I said, half pleading. "Cyrus, give me a break." Cyrus took my hand anyway, turning it over slowly in his palm. Then he leaned close, his voice low near my ear. "Tristan? Tristan, I'm here. Tristan." I frowned slightly. "What is it?" Instead of answering, he pressed a soft kiss to my eyelid, his expression unusually sincere. "I really like you," he said quietly. "I like you. A lot." My heart melted instantly. I wrapped my arms around his waist, burying my face against him. "I like you too, Cyrus." After that day, Cyrus became even more clingy. Before, he only stuck to me at home. Now, even when we went out, he refused to leave my side. In places where it wasn't appropriate for him to appear, he would shift into his wolf form and stay in my arms. And the moment we were alone inside a carriage or tucked away somewhere private, he would immediately pounce. "Tristan," he'd murmur, leaning close, "pay attention to me." This shameless wolf. He even admitted that, back then, he followed me home because he had his eye on me from the start. We were still outside, so I pushed his head away. "Not happening." Cyrus looked wronged. "But just now, you were playing with my tail." I couldn't help but reach up and rub his silver ears. "That doesn't count." Cyrus looked at me seriously. "To me, it does." I simply closed my eyes. Cyrus blinked. "What are you doing?" I replied solemnly. "I'm afraid even looking at you will count as encouragement." "For me, it does," he said, leaning in to kiss me lightly. "Even if you just stand there, I can't ignore it." My face burned as I snapped at him. "Have some shame." Don't need it," Cyrus replied without hesitation. Then he scooped me up into his arms and strode toward the bedroom. "I just need you, Tristan." Cyrus was still going through his heat. I didn't want him to endure it alone, so I even brought him along during the bandit suppression. Something went wrong during the bandit suppression. Someone had leaked our battle plans. The bandits struck first, catching us completely off guard. In the chaos, a poisoned arrow was aimed straight at me. Cyrus took it with his back. "You stupid wolf." I snapped the arrow shaft in half as Cyrus collapsed into my arms. Dark veins spread rapidly from the wound. For the first time in my life, I understood what fear felt like. Cyrus's amber eyes began to darken. From behind me, someone shouted, "Your Highness! Be careful! He's going to lose control!" Cyrus struggled to pull away, but I grabbed him tightly by the waist. "Don't you dare leave!" He clenched his teeth, barely holding onto his sanity. "Tristan, let go. I'll hurt you." The next second, he transformed. Not the small wolf I could carry in my arms, but something massive. He shook me off completely, losing himself to frenzy. Bandits fell one after another. Even a wild boar that crossed his path was torn apart with his bare strength. And then, he turned toward our own men. I rushed forward and grabbed him. He spun around and bit into my shoulder, his sharp teeth piercing through. I gritted my teeth against the pain and cupped his face. "Cyrus, be good. Look at me." The scent of blood seemed to agitate him further. His pupils narrowed to thin slits. His whole body trembled. His fangs were still buried in my shoulder. Slowly, I pressed my forehead against his, guiding him bit by bit. "Breathe. Cyrus, follow me. Breathe." Gradually, A flicker of clarity returned to his eyes. He loosened his bite. When he saw the blood running down my arm, tears, hot and heavy, fell onto my hand. "It's okay," I said quickly, pulling him into an embrace despite the pain. "Cyrus, it's not your fault." That night, he didn't dare come near me. Like a dog that knew it had done something wrong, he curled up beside my bed. I lifted the blanket and called out to him, "Come here." His amber eyes trembled, but he didn't move. I sighed. "It feels empty without something warm to hold. If you won't come, I'll call Xiao Hai instead." I made a move to get up. Cyrus immediately sprang to my side, his tail wrapping around me as he grabbed my hand and guided it to his ears. "Tristan, don't call the others. I'll get jealous." I pulled him into my arms and kissed him without hesitation. "I was teasing you. You're the one I care about most." Then something occurred to me. When we first met, you could have easily bitten my hand off. Why didn't you? The wolf ears hidden in his silver hair twitched slightly. He lowered his head, brushing against the scar on my wrist. "Because you smelled like—" I finished for him, amused. "Like food?" Cyrus's face turned red as he murmured softly, "Like home." The bandits were quickly wiped out. Elliot Vale was thrown into prison by my order. The moment Cyrus lost control after being struck by that arrow, I already knew. He had been the real target all along. From there, it wasn't hard to figure out who had colluded with the bandits. Elliot Vale. He wanted to use the chaos to destroy Cyrus. And of course, I had no intention of letting him succeed. When I went to see him in prison, he looked completely at ease, as if he believed I couldn't do anything to him. And he was right. He was the youngest and most accomplished general of the Vale dynasty. His father was the powerful prime minister. Even as a prince, I couldn't easily touch him. But what if his father had already fallen? I handed him an urgent letter from my elder brother, the crown prince. It detailed everything. The second prince's failed rebellion, his attempt to seize power, and the complete collapse of his faction. And as the second prince's strongest supporter, the prime minister had already been arrested along with his entire household, awaiting execution after autumn. Elliot's face drained of color. "That's impossible." "Tristan, save me," he suddenly pleaded. "We grew up together. Don't you remember? When we were children, you said—" I cut him off coldly. "Elliot Vale, whatever bond we once had ended the moment you used me, and caused my brother to lose his position." He kept talking, but I had no interest in listening. I turned and walked away. In the letter my brother had also written, he had spoken to Father on my behalf. Father's anger had subsided. I could return to the capital. But the capital, it was a place of luxury, deception, and endless schemes. I had never liked it, and Cyrus wouldn't like it either. Here in Lee Province, Cyrus and I already had a home of our own. Extra chapter, Cyrus. I remember the cold, the endless snow, hunger gnawing at my bones, the world reduced to instinct. Survive, hunt, endure. I didn't have a name back then. No past, no future, only the present. The pack raised me, but I was never truly one of them. Too different, too human, too alone. Until I met him, Tristan Kingsley. The first time I saw him, I thought he was prey. Warm, alive, soft, everything I wasn't. I was starving, so I bit him. But the moment his blood touched my tongue, something changed. It didn't feel like feeding it, like finding something. Something I didn't understand. He didn't kill me, didn't abandon me, didn't fear me. Instead, he brought me home, gave me a name, Cyrus. At first I stayed because of food, because of warmth, because it was easier than surviving alone. But slowly, I began to watch him, learn him, stay close to him, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. When he smiled, I felt something strange in my chest. When he touched me, I didn't want him to stop. When others got close to him, I wanted to bare my teeth. I didn't understand it at first. Why I couldn't let him go. Why I always wanted to be near him. Why the thought of him leaving made something inside me feel empty. Until that day, when I almost lost him. When the arrow flew, my body moved before my mind did. There was no hesitation, no thought. Only one instinct. Protect him. Because Tristan Kingsley was no longer just someone who saved me. He was my home. I don't understand humans. I don't understand rules or status or the complicated things they think about. But I understand this. I want him. Not as a master, not as someone above me, but as mine. And I want to be his.